We want to take in a slow, deep breath. When we breathe and focus on our breath, just like a mantra, we're getting out of that rational part of our brain, the intellectual, the left brain portion, frontal brain, the part that desires to classify, to categorize, to make things simpler. So that in itself is a paradox, because in that effort to make things simpler, where in fact we may indeed be successful at it, but there's so many things to simplify. At what point do we stop? We breathe. It's a signal. It's actually more than a signal. It's an action step that we take to slowing down the action in our brain, because our breath doesn't have any intellectual information associated with it. It's just the pure state of our physical being. It happens when we're sleeping. It happens when we're focused on what we're eating. It happens if we're analyzing a problem. It happens every single moment. So it's a backdrop. It's like our heart beating. We can also focus on our heart beating if we were able to feel our pulse. So in that space, one of the things that we're getting away from is this unending categorization that our brain is doing in an effort to simplify things, but in fact, getting to a point of obsessiveness sometimes. The so-called monkey brain. Trying to predict the future is one of the big ones. Not allowing things just to be as they are. Regarding the 5 phases of speaking your truth, thinking we need to tell them the way it is. Jump straight to phase 5. Because we've created those categories. They're there, we're here, and we've got to break through the wall in order to get them to see it our way. But the amazing thing is, whereas whatever superficial belief that we have, that we believe is separating us from another, whether that's a spouse, a child, a workmate, somebody in customer service, we return to this very simple level of just breathing and our eyes closed. Everything simplifies. Remove the categories from literally anybody, not to say that that's humanly possible while we have this brain for us to maintain that, but when we can dip into it, dive into it, and give ourselves a chance to break free from all of these limitations, all of these boundaries, the so-called veil that separates us, this illusion. And basically these categories are the illusions of separateness. Because the underlying reality is we are all born in the image of the Creator. We are all sons and daughters of the Creator. The life force that we have flowing through us, it's the same life force that's flowing through every single one of us. My mantra is, this is when my eyes are open, is just love, trust, faith, grace, compassion, and gratitude. I'll just slowly run through each of those in my mind. The underlying bridge that unites us all. Those attributes of the universe, of life, of the Creator, her himself. We move in that direction and suddenly these categories, these boxes, are no longer so important. So we have these beautiful phases that we can go through rather than just diving right into my way or the highway, laying it on the line, being a straight shooter. When we feel things coming up with another, we simply just hold the space, phase one. And these 43 facial muscles we have that we send off a Morse code symbol in 1/25th of a second intervals literally communicates our thoughts to the other person on a very physiological, very scientifically documented level without a single word. For me, the majority of times, 50, 60, maybe even 70% of the time, I never have to do anything other than that. The situation shifts, the person shifts without me doing a thing more. In other words, the category that I thought they were in, they say something or do something that shows me they're more united, they're more harmonized with me than my left brain, my past history, those 100 billion connections and the literally infinite number of patterns that are formed inside of our brains from the moment of birth onward. The situation with this person transcends those patterns, that mere intention. There's this beautiful scientific principle. It's called the Wellesley effect. Wellesley being, I believe it's a women's college, but it was scientifically documented how two women rooming together, their ovulatory cycles, their menstrual cycles will actually tend to go in sync after living with each other for a period of time. So there's a hormonal level to that, there's a neurological level. These mirror neurons, these actual documented neurons, nerves inside of ourselves, that tends to mimic, to imitate, to fall into line with whoever we're with, whatever we're watching. So we watch somebody eating something that we enjoy, and we start to salivate. Going back to us just simply holding the space, breathing gently, looking them in the eye, not challengingly. They see, we hear them. They start to hear us. We focus on our breath and away from those boxes and categories. They start to do the exact same thing, totally unbeknownst by them. And this is what makes life so magical, how we can actually shift situations, shift people, shift major challenges that we may be facing. Not through hitting the nail on the head, hitting the other person over the head with our truth, but through these very gentle phases. How a frown person reads that, they read our squinting our eyes, they read us furrowing our brow, but not consciously. Most of these impulses are happening too fast for the human eye to consciously perceive. And yet we do perceive it. We pick it up on an inner level, a deeper level, on the deepest level of our neurology, because this is the way we're wired. This is why we feel this way with some people and that way with other people. We read each other in just innumerable different ways, from facial muscles to body expressions to the dilation or the contraction of their pupils tell us something. But we don't read this consciously. When their breath starts to sync with ours, just like the girls in Wellesley College, the way their ovulatory cycles start to sync with each other. When we get them to mimic us, rather than us mimicking whatever anger they may be emitting, or whatever anger or whatever dysfunction we may be perceiving that may not even be a reality. It's just coming from our own categories, our own boxes, our own patterns. So these extraordinarily subtle phases allows the other to be a mind reader. Without them even realizing they're doing it. So they shift, just as a stream of water going down a mountain may change direction by the contour of a mountain without it having to think about it, the way that the weather patterns occur as well. Any universal system, it's just one thing just naturally flows into another. What is unnatural is when we try to force one thing into another, when we try to force someone into our box, into our category. That's totally unnatural. That's what we call creating karma. And karma doesn't necessarily have to mean another lifetime. We usually experience it pretty quickly. That thing that we experience can be summed up in one single word: resistance. When we try to force another into our way of thinking, when they try to force us into their way of thinking, their way of doing things, even if they submit, that resistance builds over time. And it may not show up today, may not show up tomorrow, may not show up even this year. But eventually, because it's a buildup of energy, just the laws of nature, it could only be contained so long, just like a boiling pot of water. It eventually has to find an outlet. So again, back to our categories. On the deepest level, we know what's going on with all those we're in touch with. And the biggest thing that gets in the way, believe it or not, are our words. It's not that words aren't good. It's that too many words, too quickly, too definitively. In most circumstances, sometimes we need to be absolutely definitive when we reach that fifth stage, when they haven't gotten it or they're refusing to get it. But I would say in 95 to 99% of the time, when we do all these phases, this beautiful process we're talking about, we have a moment of grace every time we do this, just by letting go of those categories, letting go of those boxes, allowing that other person to move by themselves into alignment with us. Now, life is life, certainly in business and in relationships as well. There are things we need to be absolutely definitive about. Because if you let people push your boundaries too much, well, then you give off that signal. You give off the signal of being a victim, a target. But as long as you're coming from that place of sovereignty, knowing that if need be, you can speak your truth in the classic manner, meaning, listen, I want to share this with you, and I'm sharing it with you and with the idea that I want to come back into harmony with you, because right now something is not working. When we do it with all these gentle phases, when we use phase 4, questions of grace, could I share something with you that I think needs to be shared right now? And I've never heard it where somebody says no. So you open up the space, you make them receptive. all these little things. But again, with this work, it's very easy, especially when people first start with it, to believe that we stay in a state of denial. What holding the space is, it's very similar to denial in one standpoint, except for this, that there's intention behind it, that there is the intention that we need something to shift, and if need be, we will go to the next phase. And if you remember, there are 3 options in any one situation. To essentially accept it the way it is, to speak our truth, or to leave. And when we leave, 99.9% of the time, it's just temporary, just to give them a chance to come into alignment with us. Let's breathe that in for a moment. Take your time, but when you're ready, just slowly open your eyes.